Hey everybody, how you doing? This is about to be a really fun video. So, in this video, we are going to dive deep. We're going to get a little nerdy and talk about optics. This past week, I was hanging out with the Riton Optics crew and had the privilege to pick their brains and learn a ton about optics. In this video, we're going to dive deep into optics with Jerimiah Alexander. He's the Director of Product Development for Riton Optics. Got to learn a bunch from him last week. I am no stranger to Riton Optics. I got one of them right here. This is a 6-24 that I currently have on my 25-06. I got my Antelope last year with this optic and this rig right here. I also have taken this rig right here, as you see it, with this Riton on it, out to 1,000 yards. I also had this exact same optic on my long-barreled 308 and got a deer. And when I had this on my 308, I also took that 308 to 1,000 yards. So, needless to say, I am no stranger to the Riton Optics line. I've got many videos up already with Riton Optics, but like I said, this past week I had the privilege to sit down with the Riton Optics team, really pick their brains. So that's what this video is turn the cameras on as we learned and asked questions about Riton Optics and all their offerings. So I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I might pop up in here to explain things a little bit further if I need to, but check it out. Hanging out with Jerimiah Alexander, the Director of Product Development for Riton Optics. Like I said, he's been in the game for a long time, and he wouldn't tell you because he's a super cool, humble, and nice guy, but he has hit targets out to ranges that most people would never even dream of. I'm talking about 2,000 yards, 3,000 yards, and even further. But let's sit back, hang out with me. Let's talk Riton Optics with Jerimiah Alexander. Super cool dude.
Yeah, that's good. So it's a good question. So when we first started Riton, all my friends and family first would be like, hey, cool, like I need to get a scope. I need a scope. And I'm like, I have no idea, like where you're going with this, like just any scope? And so the two questions that I identified right away were, what are you going to do with it and how much money do you have? So what are you going to do with it? That's how the lines are broken up. Primal, tactics, conquer. Primal is going to be hunting scopes. Tactics going to be like tactical, red dots, low power. And then the conquer is precision, long range, competition. Well, what is a conquer scope? What makes a conquer scope a conquer scope? Most of our conquer scopes, most of them, have larger tubes on them so that they have more internal adjustment. Most of them are first focal plane. Most of them have zero stop turret. I think all of the Conquers now have zero stop. Yeah, they all have zero stop turrets because you're monkeying with your turrets back and forth and you don't want to get lost. Most of the Conquer scopes all have a more complex reticle. We don't have a Conquer scope with a duplex. Yeah. So those are some of the things that make a Conquer scope a Conquer scope. Primal is for hunting, so we're going to cap turrets. So if you're crawling through the woods or whatever you're doing, you don't bump your turrets and because, man, it might be a lifetime hunt. Like a lot of guys save up for a decade to go on this like incredible hunt. And like, I don't want to be the scope company that like their dream bear hunt in Canada is ruined because they shot they're like, I don't know if I'm a great shot, but I hit 700 yards west of this deer. So yeah, the other thing is just because of hunters in general and what they like, hunting scopes are generally capped. They're generally MOA. Not all, right? We talked about the 3-18, but the 3-18, the Primal 3-18 by 50 is the only Primal scope we have that isn't second focal plane and MOA. Well, why MOA? Well, that seems to be in the United States, who is our largest buying group. It seems to click easiest with people. It's the most talked about. It's just the most regular. And we range at 100 yards. We don't range in meters. So then a quarter inch at 100 means slightly more to me. And they're generally second focal plane. I start to disagree whether first or second focal plane's better for hunting, but we do second because that's what people want to buy, and we're building scopes that people want to buy, not what we think is the cool scope. And then the tactics line is just that, it's for like that tactical use. So you will also see cap turrets because stuff's coming off and across your gear. It's going to be primarily low power variable, which means it starts at 1. There's like a new term like medium power, mid power variable. Like people are saying a 2 to 12. I just say low power variable. It means it starts at 1. But what is tactical about starting at 1? Well, it's very close. It's a very close engagement. If you were doing something far away, we'd use a conquer scope. If it was hunting, you'd use a primal. So then also red dots all fall into the tactics line because they're a tactical type use. Same thing, binos would fall into hunting. Spotting scopes would fall into hunting. Can you use them for other things? Yeah, sure. You sure can. So then the next is 1, 3, 5, and 7, right? So the 7 line is all Japanese. What is Japanese? The tolerances are tighter. Everything's just built to tighter specs. The other thing is they're argon purged instead of nitrogen. Argon is just smaller. It's a smaller gas, so like it's less room for error. So everything else is nitrogen. So the 7 line has the Japanese glass. It has the Japanese components. It's built in Japan. They're all ED, which we talked about it, but I'll tell you again. HD glass is high density glass. I mean, I'll tell you guys, there's no line in the sand for high density. If you look up what does high density glass mean, like how dense does it have to be high density, I don't want to say no, maybe someone will dig something up. There's no readily available material that people are going by. Do you remember like 5 years ago, HD became this like really well-used, well-coined term? High definition. And everybody thinks it's high definition instead of high density. The idea is that glass is denser, and then there's less things bouncing around in there. If you look through ours compared to something else, you will in fact see the difference between our HD glass and someone else's HD glass. But back to the 7 line, they all have ED glass, which is extra low dispersion.
Oh yeah, for the rainbow.
Yeah, if you see light go through a prism or through a window or a waterfall or whatever, the light disperses into that light spectrum of colors. And since light's coming through a bunch of different lenses a bunch of different times, it's being dispersed and brought back. So the extra low dispersion just means there's less dispersion. So the colors are crisper, everything's clearer. I think when you're really getting down and dirty, like when I want to look through a bush at 1,000 yards and see something on the other side of it, real crisp and clear, I feel like ED glass helps with that. 7 line, Japanese construction and componentry, argon instead of nitrogen filled, pretty much all 34 millimeter on those ones too. We want extra internal adjustment. We want extra everything on that. So the 5 lines still mainly 34 millimeter tubes, still have a lot of those awesome features, but you're missing that higher end glass and construction. The 3 line, you start to see the difference in the turrets. Someone talked about turrets being different looking on the 3 line. Like the 3 Conquer 6-24, the 3 Primal, right? Those turrets don't look the same as the 5 turrets and the 7. Also the zero stop on the 7 and the 5 lines. All you have to do is go out, dial to whatever you want, pull that turret off, turn it to 0, put it back down, tighten it up. That's called a 0 reset is what that's called. But the turrets on the 5 and the 7, you've 0 reset and you've set a 0 stop. Super simple and easy. And then when you get down to the 1 line, we have it's primarily like 1-inch, 30 millimeter tubes. Just not a lot of first focal plane, not a lot of illumination, just those lower end scopes. But the glass, again, still, we focus on the glass like a lot because that's the main,
That's what people see.
That's the main thing. So if it sees clear and it tracks amazing, then we're on point, pushing forward. So those are the main, I think, differences, 1, 3, 5, 7. But again, I always tell people to go look through them. Like go look and see whenever. The best thing to do is GF of a buddy, because looking through a scope in here, they all look pretty great under the right lighting at 20 yards. So like get out with your buddies that have different stuff and look through them and compare them. And again, remember, when we're setting up our scopes, I'll go over setup again one more time. So when I'm setting my scope up for me, when I set it up, I turn my magnification all the way up as high as it'll go. And I'm going to lay down behind my scope and I'm going to get comfortable, right, where I can fall asleep on that scope. And when I open up, I got a perfect view. After, that's gonna be that eye relief, right? And the reason is because your eye relief gets shorter on the higher magnification. So if it's a great eye relief on high magnification, when I dial down to low, it's like, it's easy to get in. Do it with the 1 to 10. Look at it at 1 power, come off and on, come off and on, crank it up to 10, and you see it's harder to get that perfect spot behind it. So crank it up to 10, get it. Then I want you to booger your parallax where your target's super blurry. And then this fast focus eyepiece. I'm saying this because if you compare your buddy scope to our scope, yours is set up one way, his is set up another way. It's not really a fair comparison. So keep those things in mind. But the other part of setup is I want my target to be blurry, and I'm going to adjust this. We put knurling on this because people didn't know that it existed, that there's a focus right here. And that's your reticle focus. Once that gets focused in for your eye, you probably shouldn't have to mess with it again. Again, I turn my magnification up. I blurry my target with my parallax. And your eye does a great job focusing, like that's what it's supposed to do. It's what it does all day, every day, back and forth at different distances and things. So get on that scope, and if it isn't just right, then adjust it. But stay on the scope a couple seconds, and then come off of it. Give your eyes a second to breathe. Come back on it. Do it again. Otherwise, you'll get it perfect staring at it, and then every time you come back on, it'll be blurry for a second, and then it'll get clear. So you want to take the time to be able to you want it to be clear every time you got it. Which you need to be fast, right? Like whether it be with a low power variable on an AR, things are happening quick, so you don't have time to think about 4 down and 2 over. Or if you're out shooting super long range, the wind changes so fast, then you don't want to be trying to figure out 4 down. That's why we do those numbers and brackets. And what I was telling some of the guys earlier that I do, most of the stuff that I'll tell you that I do is what I do and what I think is one of many good ideas, so I'm definitely not speaking in gospel by any means up here. But if I had a center crosshair here and then a line, I'm definitely not an artist, so let's just get over that right away. Right, and let's just say I had this, this reticle that's built like this. Well, especially for distance, let's just say that it's 12 MRAD from here to here, right? If this is 12. Well, for me, I want to be able to see where my impacts are. So again, for me, I might dial 6 and hold 6. Because now when I'm shooting here, this becomes my new aiming point, right? If I end up hitting over here, well, then I have a great bracketing system to measure really quickly that with. Versus if I'm here and it hits here or here or here or here, it's a little harder for me to get a quick grab on where it is. Again, this is my thinking and idea from what I do. So yeah, you'll see me messing around a lot with that. Someone will dial, because people be that. They're like, I said 12. It looks like you only dialed about half of it. And I'm like, correct. I did do that. So that's one fun thing that we do. The 2 to 12 reticle. I don't think all of you have seen it. Take a chance to see it for sure, please. It's a floating dot, and then what we have coming out is like a 5, 4, 3, 2, and 2. And the reason that I did that was I did just an extensive study on North American game animals and trying to range them quickly, right? And so what I did is I have a spreadsheet that I can share that allows you to use the top of this. So I'm not a terrible deer drawer, but so if there was a deer here, monster big one, that's a deer, I promise. I can measure from withers to brisket here with these lines, and I can know. And people are always like, well, what if you're doing elk this day and then mules this day? Well, you got to know, you have to know, and if you're hunting, you're probably going to hunt something, right? Not everything in the world. So you would go out and say, hey, today I'm hunting elk. On average, the male elk is about this size. And again, people are like, well, how am I supposed to memorize all those distances? Don't, because if it's from 100 to 300, does it really matter? Probably not. You could probably hit a pie plate at that distance. So it's for those farther distances out, you can start to use that reticle to measure even turkeys, top to bottom turkeys. Again, for precision, a lot of people, so duplex, we're used to as a duplex, right? And depending on how thick it is, it covers up a portion of your target. So what a lot of people have grown to like is something like this, where the dot floating means it's not connected to any line, bless you, or anything like that. And I think the 3 to 12 is like an illuminated, the only part that illuminates is the center dot. And again, for hunting, like this long range hunting things come up and become really popular, but not tons of people are really shooting animals 1,000 yards away. So something pretty simple does work. The 4 to 16 has a floating dot, but the lines are thicker, so there's a bigger dot. And then you just have like, you know, 2 MOA hash marks like this. Again, just kind of keeping it simple, but yeah, the floating dot is nice. And I'll tell you another thing. So as far as illumination goes, really, so for a high power scope, having an illuminated reticle is only useful in a handful of scenarios, Jeremiah's opinion. The main scenario that it's actually a problem is if my reticle's black and my target happens to be in a shadow. So now my target is dark or black and my reticle is dark and black. It's hard for me to distinguish exactly where I'm at. So again, Jeremiah's opinion, that's the most useful time to have an illuminated reticle. The other time is like today with a low power variable when the Christmas tree looks like little gnats, you know, antennas in there and you can't do it at all. Having something illuminated for a quick reference point helps with that as well. And again, with the 3 to 18 primal, the idea was that really on the lower powers, on the lower powers, you're just seeing this kind of center dot. These aren't exact. I'm just making lines. On the lower powers, you got like a big bracketed point, and it really isn't until you zoom in that you start to see that you have these wind dots out here. And that's why, because a lot of people are like, well, on 3, I can't really see the wind dots that good. And I'm like, for sure, that's because if you're on super low power, it's probably because you don't need to, you're not shooting super far away or something that requires that level of precision. You sure could zoom it in.
Appreciate everybody who watched this far and made it to the end of the video, but a big thank you to Jeremiah and the Riton team for having us out. This was just a tiny snippet of the education and instruction that we received while we were down there hanging out with those guys. But this was definitely some cool and interesting and information that we learned from them. Super appreciative and grateful for them taking the time to have me out and to learn me some stuff, to educate me some stuff, and tell me more about the Riton Optics line. Like he said in the video, they've got the Conquer, that's your long range stuff, the Primal, which is the more hunting focused stuff, and then the Tactics stuff, which is more of the tactical stuff, low power stuff, all kinds of stuff. They literally make optics for just about anything that you might need. And then they've got their different levels, 1, 3, 5, 7, that Jeremiah explained very well in the videos. But hey, appreciate y'all watching. If you never heard of Riton Optics, now you have. Like I said, I've got a few of them myself. Stay tuned for a whole lot more videos. Appreciate y'all watching. We will see you guys on the next one. Again, a big thank you to the Riton Optics team. Y'all go check them out and tell them WHOTEEWHO said hey. Appreciate y'all. WHOTEEWHO!